Why do we need to talk about craft bean to bar chocolate makers shutting down their business? Well, because it's kind of a big deal right now. Right before summer, we've seen some very successful craft bean to bar chocolate makers closing down their business, announcing on Instagram or in their newsletter that unfortunately they were shutting down. Of course, they mentioned both personal reasons and also, the pressure of cocoa prices, operational costs, and all of this. But it was pretty shocking because some of these brands were very famous and appreciated, and they were like some of the best, at least in our, chocolate nerds niche. To mention a few, I'd say Letterpress chocolate shut down. Oh my God, such a big shock. The chocolate was amazing. And I think it was probably one of my favorite textures, not too creamy, not too buttery, that perfect velvety. It was such a shame that they closed down. But also Solstice chocolate. I've always been a Solstice chocolate fan. Sometimes there are those assortments with so many origins and you're like, but they taste so kind of the same, but not Solstice. Each single origin bar of Solstice was amazing and unique. And then I can also think of Madu chocolate in Texas. I don't think I've ever had the pleasure of tasting their chocolate, but they were doing fantastic. I mean, they were super appreciated, making great inclusions. They are all in the US, but I don't think it's a matter of location. I think just because, these brands were very famous and they made announcements, so we've got to learn about them. But I always believe that there's an underground of small chocolate businesses shutting down, but they don't talk about it, they don't make announcements, they don't say it out loud. They just go under the radar, close silently. Maybe they stop posting on their Instagram accounts. After some months, their websites stop working. So I don't think it's a matter of the US, it's a worldwide thing where people start small bean to bar chocolate businesses, then they scale up a little bit, and then everything seems great, and then they just shut down out of nowhere. But I'm not only thinking about the businesses closing down, I'm also thinking about those bean to bar makers that are, surviving, perhaps thriving, but not everything makes perfect financial sense behind the scenes or under the surface. There are those that make chocolate as a side hustle. Maybe they take money from their full-time job as an engineer, as a lawyer, and then they just put it into the bean to bar activity that perhaps breaks even in the best case scenarios, or they get investors, public funds, or perhaps there are those that seem to be very successful, even financially. They don't have investors, but you see them working themselves to the ground, stressing themselves out, burning out, working 18 hours a day without employees. There are also those that make money but not with their chocolate products. Maybe they make money with factory tours, with chocolate workshops, with all other things around the chocolate production. There's always been a question tormenting me for the past 10 years, and it's like, is the craft bean to bar chocolate business inherently unprofitable? Perhaps because we cannot push yet $30-40 final prices on a chocolate product to consumers, or are we doing something wrong to make it unprofitable? And I don't really have an answer to that, but in the past years, and also by visiting chocolate makers in Italy, I'm not sure if you follow me on Instagram, but I've been traveling all around Italy, visiting the chocolate labs of my craft bean to bar chocolate makers friends here. And I really love to ask the hard questions. Like, I'm a very practical Capricorn, so I love to talk about money, finances, like, hey, did you get investors for this? Or are you paying for everything yourself? What's making you the most money? And so today I want to share with you what I believe to be true on why craft bean to bar chocolate businesses are shutting down. Multiple reasons. It could be a combination of all of this. It could be none of this. It could be just personal reasons, but I just wanted to go through them with you. First, I'd say operational cost. It's really expensive to make chocolate, especially at a small scale. Like, you start to see profits once you go to a certain production capacity. Before that, everything seemed pretty inefficient with small machines, tiny packaging orders, and all the small quantities that don't really make much economical sense. We are talking about renting a space, all the bills, all the machines. There are so many machines involved in chocolate making, and many chocolate makers, it's not that they have the cash to pay for all of them at once. So there's a lot of debts that remain for many years from the purchasing of those machines. First of all is operational costs. It's way more expensive to make chocolate than people realize. Second, I'd say the seasonality of chocolate. I've talked to many Italian bean to bar chocolate makers, and they tell me we only sell chocolate bars during October, November, December. That's it. So seasonality of chocolate, where you have these huge spikes of income, Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, but then it's very quiet for the summer months and other months. So it's very hard to manage that cash flow and to make sure you make the right investments and the right time and you spend wisely when there's a lot of money, when there's no money. Scaling up too soon, this is something I've seen. Have you ever noticed sometimes there are chocolate makers that make an announcement on Instagram, we are renovating a new place, we get a bigger space, we're scaling up because we see there's a lot of demand for our product. And then 2 years later, they just shut down. This is nobody's fault, but I think sometimes chocolate makers get very enthusiastic about the fact that people appreciate their chocolate, that they think, okay, let me buy a bigger melanger, let me rent a larger space, but then their potential new sales don't really cover the entire cost of scaling up that much. Also, like, it includes hiring employees. Oh my God, labor is the most expensive thing in chocolate, probably. When you have labor, it definitely eats up like 60% of your chocolate products. Then I'd say not having your numbers in check. It's like chocolate makers, to make it work, really have to make love to their Excel sheets. Again, talking to different chocolate makers in Italy while doing this personal summer tour made me realize that the most successful ones, like the ones that are self-sustained, that don't need as many investors, that make it all work, are the ones really obsessed with their Excel sheet. And also obsessed with another point, efficiency of their operations. Like, not being efficient enough is another reason why craft bean to bar chocolate makers shut down. I've seen chocolate makers obsessed with tracking every action of themselves or their employees during the day and go tackle those bottlenecks, that wasted time, where they can go and make things more efficient. But I'm talking like 5 to 10 minutes more efficient. That's the level of efficiency that they're looking for. Another thing is not diversifying your products enough. Again, craft chocolate makers have told me, at least in Italy again, we sell bars only 3 months out of the year. So what do you do the rest of the year? At least here they started to make a lot of chocolate spreads, which people seem to really appreciate when they say, few ingredients, even if it's 10, 15 euros, they're willing to pay for it. When the hazelnuts are, from a specific place, when there's real chocolate in the spread, yada, yada. But also cacao teas, cacao nibs, engaging with B2B professionals like ice cream makers and pastry chefs. Diversifying your product is a freaking must, and probably the reason why those who stick too much to chocolate bars are not really seeing a lot of sustainability in the long term. I would also add, well, as a marketing person, let me say this, a lack of marketing and branding planning. There are so many brands right now that make craft bean to bar chocolate. Everybody uses the same freaking terminology. We are sustainable bean to bar, ethical, where our cacao comes from, fine flavor, aromatic. It's all the same buzzwords. And so people think that just using those buzzwords is enough. I mean, buzzwords in craft chocolate means that it's, they're probably really making that. Like, they don't just spit out sustainable. It's really because their cacao comes from agroforestry systems. But if everybody speaks the same language, and now that the big industry has started to speak the same language, that each word is devalued. And so I see many chocolate makers that don't really take the time to think, okay, who I am among my competitors, what's my differentiator, what are my unique selling propositions. And so if I cannot remember you among hundreds and hundreds of new craft chocolate makers that are popping up every week, then you're not gonna last too long. So let me see if I got everything. Operational costs really high, seasonality of chocolate, scaling up too soon, not having your numbers in check, lack of marketing branding plan, lack of process optimization, no product diversification, and lastly, I'd say making poor distribution and retailing decision. I've seen so many craft chocolate makers, unfortunately, regretting the deals with perhaps big food chains. I'm always thinking about Whole Foods, okay, I'll be honest. The terms of conditions to make business with Whole Foods, I heard, are pretty awful. Profit margins are super thin. You're expected to increase your production capacity overnight. So if you don't pay attention to who you make retailing and distribution deals with, then you can be in big troubles later on. And all these reasons, some of them can be attributed to the chocolate maker, and others are out of the chocolate maker range of action. For example, if you have to wait to scale up because you don't have the numbers in check at the moment, you don't have the means, then you're probably not gonna be able to afford employees. So you're probably working 12 hours a day, even if it's your side hustle. And so you're probably not gonna have the time to think about a proper marketing and branding plan, or to really think through how to diversify your products. Like, you really don't have the physical time and energy and mental clarity to tackle other aspects of your business. So, it's not really your fault. It's inherent in the growth of your business. Or, for example, the seasonality of chocolate doesn't really help. Nothing you can do about that. People don't really think about chocolate during the summer months. Even with a quick Google search, if you look at the chocolate keywords that are searched throughout the year, in the summertime, chocolate is not among the top 100 topics that people think about. So all this said, I think it's really interesting to try to answer the question, is craft bean to bar chocolate inherently an unprofitable business model? Or are we doing something wrong? Are we missing something? Are we not being as efficient, as creative, as smart with our business? So let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. If you are in the chocolate business, please share your experience. Usually the comments is where the real value is. Like, me blabbering is okay, but I think the real value is always in the comments. And I'll see you for the next video for more insights in the chocolate industry. Bye.